Niagara Falls, for centuries, it has been a symbol of nature's raw, untamable power. Over 3,000 tons of water crash over these cliffs every single second. To the average observer, it is a wonder of the world. To the daring, it is a challenge. But in the late 19th century, it was widely considered a death sentence. Before the high-tech safety gear of the modern era, before the professional daredevils of today, there was one person who decided to do the unthinkable. They didn't want to just look at the falls, they wanted to go over them. But here's the twist. It wasn't a young, muscular athlete or a seasoned explorer. It was a 63-year-old schoolteacher, Annie Edson Taylor, driven by poverty, armed with a custom-made pickle barrel, and fueled by a desperate need for fame. Annie Taylor was about to become the first human being to ever survive a trip over Niagara Falls in a barrel. This is her incredible, terrifying, and ultimately tragic story. Today, on FirstoGraphy, we're looking at the woman who became the Queen of the Mist. To understand why someone would climb into a wooden box and jump off a 167-foot waterfall, you have to understand the era. Annie Edson Taylor was born in 1838. By the turn of the century, she was a widow and a retired teacher who had seen better days. Her husband had died years earlier, and her savings were dwindling fast. In 1901, there was no social security, there was no retirement fund. For a woman of her age, the future looked bleak, the poorhouse. Annie was living in Bay City, Michigan, when she read about the upcoming Pan American Exposition in nearby Buffalo, New York. She knew that millions of tourists would be flocking to the area to see the wonders of the new century. She needed money fast, and she realized that if she could do something truly spectacular, something no man had ever done, she could spend the rest of her life as a wealthy celebrity. She famously said, "I might as well die as stay in the condition I am in." She didn't just want to jump. She wanted to survive. Annie was meticulous. She designed a barrel made of sturdy Michigan oak and iron hoops, padded on the inside with a leather harness and cushions. It wasn't just any barrel, it was her lifeboat. But before she would risk her own life, she needed a test subject. 2 days before her scheduled attempt, Annie decided to test her invention. She found a stray cat, reportedly named Loggerhead or Iris, and placed the feline inside the barrel. The barrel was towed into the Niagara River and sent over the Horseshoe Falls. Crowds gathered, expecting the worst. When the barrel was eventually recovered and the lid was pried open, the cat crawled out, shaken and perhaps a bit dizzy, but alive. A scratch on its head was the only injury. Annie took this as the ultimate sign. If a cat could survive, so could the Queen of the Mist. October 24, 1901, Annie's 63rd birthday. A small boat rowed Annie and her barrel into the middle of the Niagara River, just above the American-Canadian border. The river here is deceptive. It looks calm, but the current is pulling everything toward the abyss with an invisible, iron grip. Annie climbed inside the 4.5-foot-tall barrel. She wore her best dress, a decision she made to maintain her dignity, should she be found dead on the rocks below. Her assistants used a bicycle pump to compress the air inside the barrel to help her breathe, and then they sealed the lid tight. At 4:05 p.m., the barrel was cut loose. For 20 minutes, Annie Taylor bobbed in the rapids of the upper river, inside. It must have been a nightmare. The darkness, the suffocating heat, and the sound a low, rhythmic thumping of water against wood that grew into a roar that shook her very bones. The barrel reached the brink, the point of no return. For a split second, it hung in the air. And then gravity took over. 167 feet. Roughly the height of a 15-story building. The barrel slammed into the churning basin below with the force of a cannonball and vanished into the white foam. Spectators on the shore held their breath. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. The barrel didn't resurface. Newspapers had already prepared their tragic headlines. But then, 17 minutes after the plunge, a dark shape emerged from the mist. The barrel was floating near the Canadian shore. Rescuers rushed out, dragged it to safety, and pried it open. A hand reached out. Annie Taylor was alive. She was bruised. She was bleeding from a small cut on her head. She was in shock, but she had done the impossible. Her first words to the press were simple and chilling. No one should ever do that again. Annie Edson Taylor had achieved what no one else had before. She became a global sensation almost overnight. For a brief moment, she was one of the most famous women in the world. She toured, gave interviews, and posed for photographs with the very barrel that saved her life. But fame is fleeting. The fortune she dreamed of never came. The public quickly lost interest, and newer, younger daredevils began chasing even bigger stunts. Worse still, her manager betrayed her, running off with her famous barrel, the very thing that made her story real to audiences. Without it, her career collapsed. Annie spent years, and nearly all her remaining money, trying to recover it. She eventually did, but the legal costs left her with almost nothing. In a cruel twist of fate, she ended up exactly where she feared she would be all along: poor, forgotten. In her final years, Annie sold postcards and small souvenirs near Niagara Falls, the very place she had once conquered. Tourists passed her by every day, many never realizing that the elderly woman sitting quietly by the roadside was the legendary Queen of the Mist. She died on April 21, 1921, at the age of 82, penniless, her funeral paid for by donations. But her legacy did not disappear. Annie Taylor started something. In the years that followed, others would attempt to go over Niagara Falls, some surviving, many not. Today, such acts are illegal, punishable by heavy fines and serious consequences. But Annie was never just a daredevil. She wasn't chasing adrenaline. She wasn't seeking thrill. She was chasing survival. A woman pushed to the edge by poverty, by circumstance, by a world that offered her no safety net. And so, she made a choice, a terrifying, impossible choice. She looked at one of the most powerful forces on earth, and believed she could live through it. And somehow, she did. So what do you think? Was Annie Taylor a hero who took control of her destiny? Or was her leap a desperate gamble that cost more than it gave? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories about history's most daring firsts, don't forget to subscribe to FirstoGraphy for more untold stories. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next chapter of history.